Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Internet Society Board Meeting 189. Per the ISOC board bylaws, I will run the AGM until the board chair is elected, which will happen shortly. First of all, does anybody have any conflicts to declare? Kathleen is in the waiting room. Lauren, can you let us know when Kathleen is in?
I'm in. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, Kathleen. Seeing no conflicts, we will begin the process of officer elections. I will note for observers, and we do have a few in the room, that we will be moving from open and observer session into closed executive session and back several times for deliberations and voting. So this is where we stand up and sit down several times. So we will move now to the annual election of the board chair. I understand that Ted Hardy has offered his name as a possible board chair. Are you still able and willing to serve in that role?
Yes.
Okay. That didn't matter.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to share about your candidacy?
I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity that I've had over the past year to serve. And if chosen again, I would continue to carry forward with the mission and according to the action plan that we've already laid out.
Thank you. Is there anyone else among the eligible candidates who would like to put their name forward as board chair? I'm sorry, Punke? Can we nominate? I don't. Alona? If somebody is running, they need to put their hand forward. Okay. Seeing no other candidates for chair, we will now move into closed executive session for deliberations among the board. I kindly ask that all candidates and anyone who is not a trustee to please step out of the room. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the observer section. We, in a moment, will proceed to the vote. We did have a discussion within the board, and the one a message that we wanted to mention to the community is the board had a discussion of the importance of succession planning within leadership positions and diversity within leadership positions going forward. And so this is something that we, the board would like to revisit in the coming months. So with that, we will proceed to the vote, and I will turn it over to Lauren to provide voting instructions.
Will be done in board effect, and I am dropping the link in the Slack general channel right now. If any trustee needs that link in another way, please let me know. And I'll give everyone a few minutes to log their vote. I see that 8 votes are already in. If anyone's having trouble with the link or board effects. All right, we'll give everyone. All the votes are in. The results for the ISOC board chair position are 10 for Ted and 2 abstains.
It's, I think you need to hit reload.
Thanks, Kathleen. Sorry about that. I read the numbers wrong. For ISOC board chair, the results are 11 for Ted and 2 abstain.
Okay, congratulations, Ted. As the newly reelected board chair, I hand the meeting over to you.
Thanks very much, Sally, and thanks to the board for its confidence in another year. I take very seriously the board's interest in making sure that we focus on succession and that we focus on diversity as well in the upcoming year. We now turn to the election of other officers. There will be 2 elections here. The first will be for treasurer, and the second will be for at-large members of the executive committee. As the board will remember, in previous discussions, we decided that rather than having a secretary this year, we would elect 2 at-large members of the executive committee to ensure that there was sufficient breadth in the executive committee to handle the likely workload of the upcoming year. So the first of those 2 will be for treasurer. I understand that, Laura, you will not be standing again. Before we go to self-nominations, let me thank you very much for your extraordinary work as treasurer over the past couple of years. I would clap louder, only I know you have a headache. Now, may I ask for folks who are volunteering to stand as treasurer for the upcoming year? Victor?
Yes, I would like to stand.
Is there anybody else who would like to stand for treasurer for this year? Seeing none, we now go through the same procedure we just did for board chair, and I will ask those who are not voting members or those who are not members of the board to exit the room while there is a discussion. And, Victor, we'll see you soon. Thanks very much, everyone, and welcome back to the public session. The next item of business will be the vote on the treasurer position. Laura, will you again post that in Slack? Lauren? Thank you.
The link to the election for the treasurer is now in the Slack general channel.
If you're already in Board Effect but not Slack, it's also at the bottom of the home page under My Polls and Surveys.
We have all but 1 vote. Does anyone need assistance with Board Effect? All right, all the votes are in. There are 12 votes for Victor and 1 abstain.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much, Victor, for your willingness to serve. Welcome. The next election will be for 2 at-large members of the executive committee. As we discussed, we're very interested in making sure that the executive committee has the capability of supporting next year's succession. And so two folks have volunteered to serve on the executive committee as at-large members. And while they're to come up to speed on the work of the executive committee and be trained as potential chairs. Those two people are Barry Liba and Charles Mock. Are there any other trustees who would like to stand for at-large membership in the executive committee at this time? Seeing none, the procedure is once again that I must ask everybody who is a candidate or a non-voting member to leave the room, and we will then have a short discussion and return. Welcome back, everybody. We're back in open session again, and my understanding of the logistics at this point is that we'll actually have two links, one a vote to appoint Barry and one a vote to appoint Charles. So Lauren, if you could share those links with us, we'll go through that.
Both links have been provided in the board's Slack general channel. Again, please click and vote on each link. The votes are in for the two positions with the executive committee at-large members. For Charles, 11 votes in favor and, sorry, 11 in favor and 1 abstain. We are missing 1 vote. And for Barry, we have 12 votes in favor and 1 abstain.
Thank you very much to each of you for your willingness to serve, and welcome to the executive committee. The local observers will be very relieved to hear that the appointment of the rest of the committees does not require you to get up and move around anymore. So feel free to settle in. The next set of appointments is the appointment of the committee chairs and members. For the completeness of this, I'll note who is on each committee for any listeners who may not be able to read the screen. The audit committee will be chaired by Sagarika, and its members will be Olafunke, Brian, Russ, Charles, and Caleb. The compensation committee is chaired by the board chair, and its members will be Olafunke, Romano, Brian, Russ, Barry, and Caleb. The elections committee will be chaired by Sagarika. Its members will be Maureen, Charles, Laura, and as an ex officio member, Sally. The executive committee will be the board chair, the treasurer, and the 2 recently appointed at-large members, so myself, Victor, Charles, and Barry. The finance committee will be chaired by Victor, and its members will be Romano, myself, Victor, Kathleen, and Laura. The governance committee will be chaired by Charles Mock, and its members will be Romano, Brian, Maureen, Barry, and Sagarika. The leadership continuity committee will be chaired by Olafunke. Its members will be myself, Russ, Victor, Barry, and Caleb, with an ex officio member of Sally. The nominations committee will be chaired by Kathleen. And we'll have Olefunke, myself, and Victor as members. The PAR Nominations Committee will be chaired by Barry, and it will have Romano, Charles, Kathleen, and Caleb as members. And Sagarika, thank you. So that's the set of committee assignments as previously discussed. And the resolution reads, resolved that the Internet Society Board of Trustees makes the following appointments to committees for the board for the 2020, that should say 2025 to 2026 term. May I ask someone to move the motion? Brian, and a second, Barry. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by raising your hand either in the tool or in person. Thank you very much. I believe that was unanimous, but just for avoidance of doubt, are there any opposed? Any abstain? Seeing none, the resolution passes. Thank you very much. And thank you to each of you for your service on these committees. The next item of business is an appointment of the liaison to the ITF Nominations Committee. The resolution reads, appoint a liaison to the ITF Nominations Committee. Resolved that the Internet Society Board of Trustees appoints Russ Housley as Internet Society Board Liaison to the ITF Nominations Committee for the 2025-2026 term. Is there any discussion of the resolution? May I ask someone to move then? Brian, who has served many times in this, has leapt out of his seat in his anxiety to make sure, and Barry has seconded again. Having having been moved and second, may I ask all those in favor to signify by raising their hand? Thank you very much. Again, I believe that's unanimous, but for avoidance of doubt, are there any opposed or any abstain? Seeing none, this is approved. Thank you very much, Russ, for your service. The next item of business is to approve dates and locations for the 2025 to 2026 board meetings. Note that these are always tentative. If there are matters arising either of health or of world historical situations, these are always subject to change, but this is the resolution for the next year. Resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the following dates for its meetings in 2025 and 26, and provided it remains practical to travel and meet in the determined locations. The proposal is the 2025 retreat will meet the 6th and to the 7th of September in Vancouver, Canada. The 2025 Q4 meeting will be the 8th to 9th of November in Montreal, Canada. That's associated with the upcoming ITF meeting there. The 2026 Q1 meeting will be the 5th to 6th of March in Mumbai, India, associated with the ICANN meeting, which will be taking place there. And the 2026 annual general meeting will be the 27th to 28th June in Eastern Canada, with the exact location to be determined. Is there any discussion of the resolution? Laura?
Just noting that the Mumbai dates are weekdays again, which is not ideal.
Thank you for that note. Charles. Oh, sorry, Caleb.
Although very irrelevant, I've realized that almost all the March meetings are always on my birthdays, and I don't get to spend it with family. Not protesting, but I'm just noting it.
Thank you very much, and we'll make a note to have an appropriate celebration.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And yeah, and I do hope that we get home for Father's Day celebration on time.
Okay.
September meeting, if we are going to have that in Canada, I think I might take visa and it will take time, like I think more than 3 months.
Okay. Is there any other discussion of the dates of the meeting? Barry? Oh, we haven't gotten to that bit yet. Seeing, seeing no other discussion, may I ask someone to move the resolution? Barry and Caleb, move and second. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by raising your hand, either in person or by video. Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to the happy occasion of us having the opportunity to welcome new chapters in SIGs. At this moment, we have the opportunity to welcome our new chapter in North Macedonia, and the resolution reads that the Internet Society Board of Trustees extends a warm welcome and congratulations to the new North Macedonia chapter. I propose that we approve this by acclamation. Thank you very much, everyone. And it is now time for me to ask Flavio to take over to give us the CHAC report.
Oh, it's on. Lauren, my slides are there? Oh, thank you. So thank you for having me here to give this report from the CHAC to the board. Next slide, please. This is just to remember the current members of the steering committee of the CHAC. We had a modification in the steering committee. Lastly, Katarina Gevorgyan from the Armenia chapter stepped in as a secretary, replacing Anna Momo David from Namibia chapter, who could not keep this position because of personal matters. So Katarina was appointed as new secretary in the steering committee. So these are the members that are in the committee since January this year. So next slide, please. So this is just to remember, I have presented this to you in my last report in March. These are just a list of our main plans and priorities for this year. And I will talk about them later in the presentation. First is to, together with staff, help create more meaningful opportunities for engagement of chapters and members. The second one is to enhance the communication and cooperation with the staff from both ISOC and ISOC Foundation, and also with the Board of Trustees. The third one is the revision of the CHAC rules and procedures. The fourth one is to support the ISOC's new initiative on the archives from the chapters. The fifth one is to remove barriers for new chapters, and finally to improve transparency of the CHAC actions and positions. So I will report on all of them except for the third point there, the revision of the rules and procedures of the CHAC, because this work is yet to be started. There was a small group of volunteers that were willing to make a proposal to bring this to the CHAC, but this has not yet started yet. So we are waiting for them, or maybe trying to find a new volunteers to start this work. So next slide, please. So among the goals of the CHAC, I would say these two are important from the chapter's perspective. The first one is that we give chapters more tools and conditions so that they improve their influence and help drive internet governance policies, both locally in their countries, in their regions, and also globally. So this is helping chapters locally. Yeah, and the second one regards the relationship between the chapters and the organization ISOC. Yeah, it's our understanding that the ISOC strategies, priorities, and programs should be more concretely influenced by contributions coming from the chapters and eventually also channeled through to the CHAC or directly from the chapters, depending on the various engagement opportunities that can be created. So next slide, please. So this is something that I would say it's an excellent example of things that we can do together, the CHAC and the staff, and that do not depend on formal advice. I know that there is in the rules of the CHAC that it is one of its missions is to give advice, formal advice to the board, for instance. But I think that with dialogue we can do more and quickly. And this is one example of that. Yeah, this was discussed in the steering committee in the beginning of the year, and the idea that we could take some concrete actions to lower barriers for the new chapters around their chartering and first year of existence, because there was this rule that new chapters, that chapters information could not receive, for instance, the chapter admin funding. And this was discussed with staff, and this was very quickly modified so that this is already done, so that newly chartered chapters are now eligible to receive the admin funding already in their first year. Yeah. And as a second step, which is still in progress, is to prepare an easy-to-read checklist for the chapter's information for their easier planning. So, for instance, which costs need to be covered by the groups themselves, for instance, local legal registration and things like that, and also which costs can be charged to the chapter admin funding budgets after chartering, for instance, opening bank account, setting up and hosting web presence, and so on. So it's kind of manual with lots of information for the new chapters to easier their planning and the start of their operation. And in the longer term, this is still under consideration, is that ISOC has this year this initiative with Nonprofit Builder, this partnership with Nonprofit Builder, trying to offer capacity building to the chapters regarding, for instance, funding, so that they can find funding for themselves, yeah, in their countries or regions, or with international organizations and so on. So let's see what will happen from this experience, and then see if there is opportunities there through this partnership for chapters to also find funding for not only for their formation process, but also for their continued operation later. So next slide, please. This is something we have already talked in my last report to the board. This is the new chapter content archive project. And the idea is that the ISOC and ISOC Foundation staff could support a chapter-led chapter content archive project. And then there were 2 volunteers from Mexico and the US New York chapters. They're working on an initial document, laying out initial ideas for this project. And the staff has received an initial draft, but it's still waiting to receive final document from them. The same with us. We did not get yet a document with more concrete proposal. And the idea is that then later a working group will be set up under the CHAC to help the Mexico and the US New York chapters to develop and guide this project. I don't know if maybe Chris could later talk a little bit more about this, or now, if you have more information on that.
Am I on? Yeah. No, absolutely. So we've had a series of conversations between our community engagement and community comms team with the New York and Mexico chapters. We've, in the past couple of weeks in particular, a lot of fast back and forth on the proposal. We're in a really good place. We had a great conversation with them last week that I think gives us a really strong proposal and strong progress. So I would expect us to be moving forward with this very quickly in the next month or so, and certainly by the next board meeting, I would hope that we have the plans in place and the internal funding secured to support it, and then we can talk about how we set up the right structure under the CHAC to be able to work with the New York and Mexico chapters for this.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Chris. Maybe we could schedule. Maybe you could come to the next steering committee meeting and then make a brief report on that. Maybe we can invite also the people from the US and New York and Mexico chapters to talk to us in the steering committee. So thank you for that. So
or maybe we can finish and then we,
yeah.
for now, okay.
Yes, particularly about this project, I think it's a great idea. But I also want to make sure that the either the representatives from the organizing chapters, either the New York chapter and the Mexico chapter, as well as the Czech, would be able to consult the chapters about what they really need, because they may be used to doing things in a particular way. And if you set up a new system, whether or not they are better, more advanced or not, and they have to adjust to the new system, as we have seen from many of the other changes in services that ISOC provides, they may, you need to set up the expectations early and also get their requirements in and make sure that they, all of them are, or most of them, as much as possible, can be accommodated. Otherwise, there will be a shortfall in the expectation. So that's the only thing that I really want to hopefully remind. And Flavio, you can try to see if you can organize maybe some consultation meetings with the chapters.
Yeah, Charles, you are absolutely right. Yeah. We would not try to put this in movement before consulting with the chapters. Yeah, the next CHAC meeting is only in September. Maybe if we can earlier than that, although there is summertime now in Northern Hemisphere, but anyway, we can maybe sooner than September make some presentation to the chapters and get initial feedback from them, and then give the chapter some time to reflect on that and make some proposals to improve yeah.
No, very happy to do that, Flavia. We'll work
Yeah.
with you and the CHAC to see how we can organize that session.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Charles. Yeah. So next slide, please. So this is one of our priorities, is the transparency of all our actions and documents and so on. So the steering committee leadership team worked with staff to update this CHAC document index, which has links to all the CHAC documents from the CHAC, from the steering committee, minutes and agendas and all stuff, action items list and so on. And this index is now available to all the chapter leaders via the resources pages in the AMS. Yeah, and of course there are some documents that are restricted only to CHAC representatives. Other ones are available to all chapter leaders, and then there is the public web page of the CHAC with documents that are available to all the public. Yeah. So this has been discussed with the steering committee and presented to the CHAC and has been approved in our last meeting. So this is up there in the AMS, this document index. So next slide. Yeah. This is another of our priorities, is to give chapters and members more opportunities for engagement and collaboration among themselves, among chapters, but also with staff, then brought from ISOC and ISOC Foundation. Yeah. That is in February, back in February, our previous full CHAC call, the staff presented the various engagement and collaboration opportunities that are planned for this year, for 2025. And Specifically, two collaboration opportunities were also discussed during our last full check call in May, back 20 days ago. First one is about the WISIS plus 20 review process and advocacy work towards the UN. And the second one, it's about community workshops. Yeah, this, with regard to the first one, there was this WISIS community group that has been created, and Isra and Mona are responsible for that. And we are having first concrete actions. Yesterday, we had a first virtual meeting, which was led by Nicolas Fuyu from the Uruguayan chapter, regarding mapping. It's kind of online exercise. We had about 25, 30 people attending this. It was open to all people interested, not only members of this community group that has been created, but any interested members. And then these people worked together under the leadership of Nicolas to try to map the WISIS action lines to the Global Digital Compact priorities there. And the idea is this works continue. Yeah, it has started yesterday, and there will be at least one monthly meeting of this community group working towards helping ISOC prepare a position for the WISIS plus 20 review process. And the second opportunity are the community workshops, something that existed until some years ago, and then these are in-person workshops in different regions. And this has been then restarted this year. I think we will have two of those community workshops this year, one for the Latin American Caribbean region and the other one for the Asia Pacific, September and October. And there was a call for fellows for fellowship program, and around 30, 35 people have been selected, and they are going through a training, and then they will go to these in-person workshops in these two regions, and something that, and the idea is to give these fellows skills, especially for advocacy work. That's building competence in the chapters. So next slide, please. So this is the idea of strengthening the cooperation and communication with the ISOC staff and also the ISOC Foundation staff and with the board. This was, we welcomed very well this quarterly calls between the CHAC and the ISOC leaderships. And this started in January. We had two of these meetings already with Sally, and Chris was there. I think Yogesh was in the last call as well. And I think this is a wonderful way of having informal conversation with no previous agenda and just talking about the things that are happening, the new ideas and programs. And so it's a healthy dialogue between the community leaders. And I think from these conversations that new ideas may develop and make easier the communication from the CHEC to the staff. And I would love to see this also coming with the board. So my presence here and in next board meetings, and I hope that this can help create opportunities for more engagement between the CHEC and the board. Next slide, please. This is just to remember this the CHEC and the CHEC steering committee activities. We have in the steering committee monthly calls, and there is this small leadership team with myself, Heba, which is the vice chair, and Katarina, which is the secretary. We hold not only monthly calls, I would say more than that, because for there are opportunities for planning different things, and there is this full check quarterly calls. We already have two of them in 2025. We'll have new calls in September and November. And then there is this that I already mentioned, this quarterly calls with the between the steering committee and the ISOC staff leadership. So these are the regular activities we have along the year. Next slide, please. This is then a brief report from our last full check call. It was on 20th of May. We had first a discussion on this document index I mentioned before with the public and restricted access to the various check documents. Then there was a discussion on the opening of the check calls to external observers, and then there was no consensus on which type of people, or if we could invite or not chapter leaders, not only the Czech representatives to the Czech calls. Then this is still under discussion, but one thing that was agreed upon was that we could open the Czech calls to the board of trustee members as observers. If there is some parts of the calls that need to be restricted because some formal advice we would discuss or something else, then we could have these two parts of the meeting as well. So a restricted one and an open observers, and we hope to implement this in the near future already for the next full check call, and then extend an invitation to the board members to come and see. We already had both Caleb and Charles as observers in the previous full check call in February, and this would be mostly welcome in future meetings. So we had a presentation by Jen Bard from the Isaac Foundation on the Impact Report 2024, and this sparked a lively discussion on improving access of chapters to funding opportunities, not only the admin funding and the Beyond the Net program, but also other programs that are led by the Isaac Foundation, and how could chapters have easier access to those other funding opportunities. Then there was a presentation by Tatiana Tropin and Jules Majal about this new community fellowship program I already mentioned to you in the previous slide, regarding enhancing advocacy skills of chapter members through in-person workshops. This is being started this year. Then there was a presentation by Isra on the WSIS Plus 20 review process and this new WSIS community group I already mentioned before as well, that we had a first virtual meeting yesterday. And there is a group there in the portal. Also, there is an email group, so the email list, so that we can exchange ideas. Then we had Yogesh presenting himself at the meeting, and this was followed by a discussion on diversity as a core value of the Internet society, and with some ideas have been exchanged with some interested members on this issue. So this was the agenda of our full check call. Next slide, please. We had 23 chapters represented in the call out of 87, which have a Czech representative appointed. Yeah, we have 119 chapters in the moment. So you see 87 of them have an appointed Czech representative. So this leaves more than 30 chapters without a representative. And so 23 out of 87 is just a quarter of the total possible total. It's a little bit more than we had in February, with only 16 chapters attended, and this is much less than we had in November with 40 chapters. So we are still struggling to see why we have this very low attendance. It seems that the agenda is not so attractive for most chapters, and we have to see with them, get some feedback, which issues they would love to have in the full check calls, so that they become more interested, and this can help chapters in their work. So we had many people from staff from both ISOC and ISOC Foundation attending the call, which is very welcome. People not only reporting, but also exchanging ideas with the check. So, next slide, please. This is just for something that is numbers that are given at the end of each full check call. The number of current full chapters is 119. 11 chapters are in rejuvenation, and since the last check call in February, we have these modifications there. Both Namibia and Georgia came from pre-rejuvenation to rejuvenation. So I think this is all I had. Next slide, I think, yeah. So open to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Flavio. I just wanted to touch on the point you made about diversity. I do think it's incredibly important that we recognize that the Internet Society's mission, the internet is for everyone, fundamentally means that we need to reach out across an incredible swath of humanity in order to serve them and to understand their needs. And that the role of the chapters is incredibly important in making sure that that diversity is represented in the work of the Internet Society, because the 119 chapters are based around the world and have perspectives and needs and strengths that may not be represented in other parts of the organization. So I wanted to thank you and the CHAC for your work on that and your attention to the matter. Are there other comments or questions for Flavio? Charles.
Yes, I want to, first of all, I want to start with thanking Flavio for joining the meeting in person to give us this report, which is a great opportunity for you to also interact with our other trustees and so on, so that, you know, we can further understand the needs of the chapters and all that. I do have one question and well, actually three questions, but the first one, I start with something that you mentioned in your presentation about the fact that there are at least around or maybe a little bit more than 30 chapters without check reps. What can we do about it? I mean, these are obviously still active chapters. They're not like, you know, so they're not like they're inactive or whatever, that we cannot reach them. So why is it like that? And what can be done about it? And about the point on increasing the participation and engagement, is it even, for example, possible that even within a CHAC, that you would be able to appoint regional lead for the different regions, because you do have representatives from different regions in the CHAC, so that they will be able to lead different efforts within the 5 regions to increase the engagement or increase the participation on your course and so on. So that's the first question. Maybe we can go one by one so that it doesn't have to be, you know.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Why do we have 32 chapters that do not have check reps? And I think because the staff, the regional engagement managers, they have one-to-one meetings with all the chapters all around the year, yeah, at least twice a year. So we could maybe talk to these regional managers and ask them to address this issue in their next meetings with all of those chapters that do not have the check reps appointed, and see what is happening. Yes, yeah. If there is some, maybe the reasons are very different from chapter to chapter. Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that possibly all those chapters are active. Yeah, but let's see. Maybe the managers have a better idea what is happening with those chapters, and if they do not have the answers already, they could address this in their next one-to-one meetings with those chapters, and then we can collect some feedback and see what can we do about it. Yeah, and there is as I mentioned, we have members in the steering committee from all the regions. This is by construction. The steering committee is elected like that, and so I think it's a very useful idea that the steering committee members attending their regional, there is this monthly meetings with the chapters in all the regions. Yet that staff organizes that every month. That we as steering committee members attending those meetings could maybe put this in the agenda of those monthly meetings and see why some of the chapters are not attending the full check calls. What do they expect from the check? What they think the check is not doing that is of interest to them. Yeah. So I think this is something that we could start doing, yeah, to understand the situation and make the check more useful and for fulfilling its mission. Yeah.
Thank you, Flavio. Just as a potential next step, I suggest that the next time you have one of the informal quarterly discussions with the ISAC leadership, that you discuss how the regional managers might be able to help with that. In queue, I have Funke and then Sally.
Well, we can rotate. Mike.
I should get $1 for every time I'm asked to put on the mic. I'll be rich. Thanks, Flavio, for that. But I was looking for the comment you made, Charles, on the chapter health update, whether you'll be there. I was looking for the numbers. But wanted to ask you, Flavio, is there any specific action that the CHAC is taking to support the chapters in rejuvenation? And what exactly is responsible for there being inactive? I don't know if that means they're not that active. Is there any particular trend the board should note? What's responsible for that, and what effort is the CHAC making to help them come back? Thank you.
Yeah, this is usually a mission that is taken by the staff, yeah, itself, yeah, that is in contact with all those chapters that are put in the rejuvenation status and to help them becoming pre-rejuvenation. And then so this is it's not in the mission of the check, but of course this is something that is of our interest to follow this and talk to the staff, but it's mostly a staff mission to help chapters in this situation. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'd first just like to thank Flavio and the leadership team of the CHAC. It's been a very good first 2 quarters and very good dialogue, I think, that's happening. With respect to the first question about chapter participation in the CHAC, our chapter engagement managers raise this with chapters in their one-on-ones with chapter leaders regularly, and encourage the chapter leaders to name representatives. So this is a regular part of the interaction between staff and chapters to encourage that kind of participation. Of course, we can't mandate it. It is not mandatory to participate. These are volunteers, let's remember. But we do also reward this through the chapter evaluations at the end of the year. So active participation is something that is, it's not a penalty, but it is at least rewarded. So there's positive incentives there. And so we do encourage that. Funke, in terms of your question regarding rejuvenation, the reasons a chapter could go into rejuvenation are varied across the globe, lots of individual circumstances. Again, these are communities of volunteers. People, sometimes leadership turnover, people move on in their lives or careers. There may be political issues within the chapter. There may just be inactivity, and there's an opportunity to rejuvenate the leadership of the chapter. The chapter engagement managers for the region are heavily involved with the local communities to try to bring about a positive outcome with respect to rejuvenation. In some ways, it can be positive. You get some fresh blood into the leadership, you get more new ideas, new legal structures that might encourage more participation. So all of those things are on the table, and the team is quite experienced in working through that.
Charles.
Yes, Flavio, I was very happy to see that in your presentation, you also mentioned the interest from CHAC and chapters on the issues on internet governance and some of the recent and upcoming discussion with visit and so on. And I believe it is a good opportunity to align that with the organizational goals and objectives of ISOC overall. Because I do know that this is an area that we want to do a lot more in and become more effective and so on. So I just wonder whether or not for this particular area, as well as maybe even other areas, that you think there are issues that the board can help Jack and the chapters uh, to become more successful and for this objective as well as possibly others.
Yeah, you see this from the check itself as such is not directly involved in this WSIS plus 20 discussion. It's not in its remit, yeah. But of course, the idea from the check is just to open opportunities like that for the chapters to get involved in those substantial discussions, yeah. For instance, WSIS plus 20 review process. So this was raised in the check. We talked to Israel. It was first last year, yeah. In Istanbul, we had a very nice conversation there in Istanbul, which raised this idea of creating a community group to discuss the WSIS plus 20 review process. And then this was done, and we welcome this, of course. And this was then so spread to the chapters that there was this opportunity for engaging in this new community group, yeah. And so, but it's not the Czech as itself which is joining this initiative. But of course, we welcome this opportunity for chapters helping the organization to build a position on the WSIS plus 20 review process. And you see that there is all this. If we take the WSIS plus 20 review process in particular, yeah, we know that there are the member states that will decide this in New York, yeah, the final negotiations there, the final language of the text, and maybe the renewal of the IGF and all those things, yeah, maybe how the WSIS and the GDC processes will be aligned and that. And we hope that chapters, because in many countries, chapters are responsible for the national IGFs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have this strong connection in the local communities. So the local chapters are very well positioned through their multi-stakeholder communities in their countries to have direct contact maybe to the local governments and influence the positions of the governments and help ISOC and help the overall internet community to have a better outcome in the WSIS plus 20 review process. Yeah. And I would love to see this happening in other. I think this year is WSIS plus 20, which is the hot issue. Yeah. But if we have other important issues in the future, I would love to see this the check in the role of facilitating or creating the opportunity for chapters to get involved with something that would not only help the organization in their global position, but also help the local realities.
Can I make just one quick comment on this particular issue? I'm glad to see the alignment and that Flavio mentioned about that the local IGFs are often organized by the ISOC chapters there. I think this is a great opportunity, and I do know that this is one area that ISOC is actually providing funding for local chapters to do these kind of activities. So I do hope that you can help us funnel some feedback from the chapters about whether this support in terms of resources as well as policy support in helping to talk with the governments and so on, whether or not there are other things that maybe ISOC can help with the chapters and Czech can coordinate.
Yeah, for sure. It's not only about funding, but it's also helping chapters to create the conditions for to help them in their local IGFs and with capacity, with connections, with I don't know. We can maybe ask the chapters themselves what they would love to have from ISOC besides funding. To help them in their they can do a survey.
Thank you very much. We are running a little bit late at this point, so Sagarika, you get the last word.
It's just a quick
Yeah.
Just a quick question regarding in your slide, you have been mentioned about the chapters who has been put onto the rejuvenization and the pre-rejuvenization, but as the check advisory committee, so what are the strategies you are planning to help those chapters rather than depending on the ISOC main? So is there any way you have coordinating with them and supporting them and helping them out to to go through this process or come back to life?
Sally?
Yes, this is a staff activity, not so much in the remit of the CHAC, although I think the CHAC is generally interested in the health of the chapters and understanding where that is. But the staff, work very closely with the local community, sometimes former chapter members, sometimes the new community that's coming in. So the individual chapter engagement managers are the main point of contact for rejuvenation activities. They support them through working on bylaws and the sort of registration information all the way up to, developing the plans that are going to keep that chapter active and healthy, and also what avenues they have to participate in the Internet Society and the various activities so that they are set up for success as they come out of rejuvenation. So that's really something that we do, and we try to keep the CHAC informed about those activities along the way.
Is it very quick, Maureen? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, is there a sort of like a staff strategy or policy or something that we, that
I'm sorry, say that again.
is there a strategy, that communication engagement strategy that is actually sort of like the chapters know about?
With regard to rejuvenation?
No, with regards to just community engagement in general, who.
Oh, yes, indeed. This is very exciting. We have in the foundation, we have hired a new lead for community communication, Al, and he is working very closely with the chapter engagement team. There's a new strategy that was presented to me just a couple weeks ago. And I'm actually quite excited. I think we're going to see some really good movement on that in the next several months. I don't know, Chris, do you want to say any more about that?
No, just to say beyond the strategy work, he's been leading the relationship with the New York and Mexico chapters on the content piece, etc. So I think a lot of the chapter members will have seen Al or had some kind of communication with him already. So it's not just that we're waiting for the strategy internally, he's already engaging and working.
We have a meeting. We had a meeting with him. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Flavio, for coming here and chatting with us today about the work of the CHAC. It looks like there's a number of ongoing engagements, and I want to thank you and the team for all your success.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We are running a little bit behind, so we do have a break set up outside, and I know many of us are ready for our next cup of coffee. So we will take a short break. If everybody can be back at 10 past the hour, we'll also be eating into our lunch break as a result of that. But at 10 past the hour, we'll resume. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The next part of our agenda is the President and CEO report. Sally.
Thank you, Ted. We are going to start this report with a video, which Lauren has.
In 2023, the Internet Society trained 47 teachers and students in Bolivia through its first face-to-face Designing and Deploying Computer Networks course, hosted at the Sebastian Obermeyer Institute. By October 2024, the Institute graduated its first cohort, supported with toolkits and routers that enhanced their labs and enabled ongoing training. In November and December, 25 volunteers piloted the Community Network's Readiness Assessment course. During the training, they identified Atahualpani, a rural town where teachers paid $30 a month for unreliable 3G, nearly 10% of their income. In response, the Bolivian chapter mobilized resources, combining reserve funds with philanthropic grant support, to procure the necessary equipment, and in early 2025, 5 CNRA-trained volunteers, students, and chapter members installed a wireless link from Serrata, the nearest fiber connection. Local teachers were trained to manage the setup. The chapter covered the first 6 months. Now teachers pay $10 monthly, and students and residents access the network through vouchers. 4 more access points are planned. Teachers from neighboring communities will also be trained, and the Bolivia chapter is seeking grant funding to expand the network to the surrounding communities. We are also working with Bolivia's regulator to integrate community networks into their policy. This project shows what's possible when all parts of internet society come together: training, chapters, local leadership, philanthropy, and policy, working as one to create lasting impact.
So yeah, congrats to the teams. I wanted to start my report to all of you with that video to show you what we and the leadership team are trying to accomplish, which is to ensure that the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation are aligned behind the strategy that the board has adopted. That we will have greater impact in the world if all the parts of the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation are working together to achieve that kind of impact. It's not easy to do. We're a big organization spread across many countries with a lot of different teams, and all of those teams have to come together and understand the objectives, what we're trying to achieve, and where their parts of the organization can contribute for impact. And it's not just staff, as you would have heard there. You would have seen that the chapter was a huge part of that local impact. So I wanted to show that to you because that is a major focus for me and my leadership and with the leadership team to ensure that what we call the all of ISOC approach is applied to those strategic objectives. We will accomplish and have greater impact if all the parts of the Internet Society and the community come together. So I submitted a CEO report. I do not have slides. I will take the report as read, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about what's in there. A couple things that I will mention in my verbal report, and then we can open it up for discussion. As we briefed the board earlier, we're making great progress thanks to Chris's leadership, but also a lot of leadership across the organizations to stand up our co-funding strategy. We have launched the connectivity co-fund earlier this year, and we have our first donor, Meta, into that fund. And we also are standing up the, I'm going to say the words right, Common Good Cyber Co-Fund that is launching as we speak. We are very optimistic about the donors coming into that fund. So I really do want to congratulate Chris and the team, our revenue team, and Sarah's team and others who have worked tremendously hard over the last several months to do, as Chris would point out, setting up one co-fund is something you usually do in a 12-month period. Instead, we've decided to set up 2 co-funds in 6 months. So that's tremendously exciting and really does set the Internet Society and the foundation up for a very bright future. To do this, as these co-funds are stood up, part of what we are doing now is ensuring that we have the appropriate internal infrastructure to support those funds. These are going to change a little bit how we work and the kinds of expectations that come to the Internet Society from our donors. And we need to ensure that we are ready and prepared to manage those funds well, to provide the level of reporting and impact data that donors expect, and frankly, that we should expect and want for ourselves. And so that is work that we are doing now and that you will see in the 2026 budget that we present to the board. As I mentioned, this all of ISOC approach, we are focused on ensuring the strategic and operational alignment between the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation. Really, really important, again, with the co-funding strategy, but also more generally, we have greater impact when we bring the expertise across both organizations together to execute on the strategy. Another thing that we are paying a lot of attention to is figuring out how to simplify and some of our internal systems and structures. I think Yogesh will speak a little bit more about that, to be more agile as an organization, better able to respond to changes in the world and changes in our community as needed, and to be more efficient and effective with the resources that we are given. Following on that, we are, and we'll have a longer conversation with the board about this at the board retreat, but we are improving our measurement capacity to be able to measure not only outputs, not only sort of outcomes for the year, but also impact measurement. Does it matter that we did the work that we do? Does it change somebody's life? Can we measure that in meaningful ways? This is, again, important not only for our donors, but also for accountability, for the funding that we use, accountability to our community, and should help us make better decisions about our strategy and implementation going forward. And then importantly, and we will speak more about this throughout the day, identifying partners for our co-funding strategy, trusted partners that can help us deliver on those co-funds. A key thing for us is we don't work alone. We work in partnership with others. We are more impactful when we do that. Our communities are great partners to us, and we're optimistic that we'll have some opportunities there. And also building out, you'll hear a bit more from Steve Song, and there's some other opportunities on the horizon with regards to our measurement and pulse framework, and improving and strengthening our ability to measure the health and availability of the internet around the world, but also use that data to demonstrate the impact of our work and inform our own decision-making. So strengthening pulse and strengthening the measurement environment within the Internet Society is extremely important to us. The rest of my report follows largely, maybe not word for word, but does track the CEO goals that were adopted earlier this year, focusing on organizational performance, which you will hear from the leaders of the organization later today. I think we're in a very good position in terms of execution on our plans, and our finances at the mid-year point are looking good in terms of our budget performance. And we are, and I guess I would also say really proud of the group and the teams this year on embracing my commitment and interest in strengthening the community and strengthening the Internet Society staff's relationship with all parts of our community, whether that be chapters or the IETF, or org members or partners or our colleagues in the Internet ecosystem. Being a good partner, being collaborative, being celebrating our community, and also finding new and creative ways to bring them into our work is something that the staff have embraced. And we see new ideas and new initiatives coming forward that we're trying this year. Some will work, some may not work, but hopefully we all feel empowered to try new ways to do that, because again, our impact will be that much stronger if we are leveraging all parts of the community towards our strategic goals. And then the last, of course, is the diplomatic environment, which I mentioned. This is, I think Charles and Flavio mentioned the importance of the WSIS plus 20 negotiations this year. That's happening within a very complex geopolitical environment, of course. And I think it's becoming ever clearer that there are going to be enormous pressures on the internet ecosystem and the internet governance ecosystem. So we as a internet community and internet technical community need to understand those pressures and be ready to speak as to the power of the multi-stakeholder model, and the importance that that has for the ongoing resilience, security, and openness of the internet around the world. So this will be, I think, a big part of my voice as CEO, and hopefully you will see the Internet Society stepping forward in a stronger and stronger role in the months and years ahead on that topic. So with that, I will pause and happy to take any questions or comments on the report. Ted.
Thank you very much for the report. I did want to drill down for a second on the diplomacy and advocacy shock. I very much agree with you that there's a strong alignment between the open internet model, which presumes that networks and individuals come together in voluntary association, and the multi-stakeholder model. But I think we have to be a little bit cautious here, because I think we may have to balance support for the multi-stakeholder model with balanced support for the technical requirements of the internet. And an example of that is in age verification. There's certainly top-down drivers for age verification, but there are also what I would call multi-stakeholder communities that are looking for age verification because they are concerned about the impact of, let's say, social media on youth. And those are legitimate concerns. And in that case, we don't want to say that their multi-stakeholder community doesn't matter. What we have to do instead is to focus them on the idea that the way age verification works in almost all implementations is fundamentally contrary to anonymization. And that without anonymization, you have censorship, either self-censorship or in some regimes, deliberate censorship. And that the result of that is the technical aspects of how the internet works may in fact cause us to have to say, we understand your concerns, but the technology to achieve what you want to achieve and to maintain the internet don't coexist at the moment. And in some cases, the math just don't work out for it ever coexisting, as in most of the anti-encryption work that's going on now. So I think when we talk about how we talk about this to others, we need to be focused on the internet and the free and open internet's way of working and how that intersects with the multi-stakeholder model, rather than saying, you know, we're here to advocate for the multi-stakeholder model because it's always right. Sometimes it's not, because what they're advocating for runs into a set of technical barriers, which, or in other cases, economic barriers, which the multi-stakeholder model can't resolve. And it's not because the wrong stakeholders are there, it's just that that's just not the way it works. So I just wanted to give you that as a comment and to think through as you do raise your voice in this, how you balance your advocacy for the way the internet works with your advocacy for that model.
Thank you. That's excellent feedback. I will share with the team there. We, as I think you know, grappling with the age verification issue constantly now because it's coming up everywhere, and sharpening the position of the Internet Society is something that we are working very hard to do. So thank you for that. I'll take that on board. Any other comments?
Charles, are you?
Yeah, I echo what Ted said, and I don't have much to add on that point, except to say that I think the multi-stakeholder model Well, does not necessarily exclude any regulations, right? So I think this whole idea is still consistent with the multi-stakeholder process and so on. But the point that I actually want to have a question about is coming back to what you have mentioned about what Sally you have mentioned about the internet governance work and the uh, the business process and so on. As I mentioned in the last agenda item, we know where many of the chapters are coming from, but I also want to understand how this work has to do with our other communities, including the organizational members and maybe even IETF. Are they very active in these areas that we work with them or not? Or where are the opportunities? I know that, for example, you just had that press release or the conference with ICANN just a few days ago. But what about other communities?
Excellent question. The org members, there's quite a bit of interest from many org members. I wouldn't say it's universal, but there are several org members that are deeply invested in this topic. They are part of the WSIS community group that Flavio mentioned. And we do meet with them as we do with the chapters and others on the topic. So there's quite a bit of, I would say, quote unquote, industry engagement in the WSIS plus 20 process. So, and they've encouraged us to do some of the things that we are sort of known for in this space in terms of the explainer documents, the non-papers, the sort of things that ISOC is known for. One of the pieces of feedback I heard in Riyadh from the org members is that they appreciate that. That helps them inside their companies explain why this work is important and those sorts of things. So we're doing that. With the IETF, in fact, after this board meeting, I will fly to Toronto for the IAB retreat and on this very topic. This was the issue that they wanted to speak about. How does the IAB engage with these processes? Where can their voice be the most helpful? They work very closely with us through our liaison, which is Ryan Polk, and trying to identify this isn't their full-time job. They have a lot to do within the IAB, but they want to be helpful, and they often will look to ISOC to provide advice on, this is the IGF is an important engagement opportunity. Maybe showing up and, living in New York for the next 6 months is not the best use of the IAB's time. And how can we share information with them to help them make those decisions? But we get a lot of requests, and I know the IAB does as well, for their voice to be heard, because people are really interested in understanding where, the technical experts are on these topics and why it matters. And then certainly beyond those direct members of our community, and we'll hear later today from Teresa, but collaborating with the so-called iStar community and the partners across the technical community is also part of what we're doing.
Could I ask a quick follow-up question on the community workshops that are mentioned in the report? It says that there are going to be 6-month online learning programs. Are those learning programs going to be available to anybody not part of the workshop as for self-study or for review? Or is this something where it needs a guided workshop approach to take through that? I mean, how could we scale that is basically the bigger question.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year we were piloting the community workshops. We had stopped doing them during COVID, and there was a lot of interest from the community to bring those back. And we tailored them to specifically focus on advocacy this year. So this was, and again, in terms of the all of ISOC approach, which was lovely about it was the community engagement team took this up and immediately went to the fellowship and training team and said, how do we do this together? So I think that on the basis of this, we will discover that there's online advocacy training that could be offered more generally to the chapters. We're going to see how this works. This is the first time we've done it this way, but these community members don't just show up for the workshop. They are doing 6 months of activities. There's been interactive training. There was a workshop, I think, a week or two ago that the teams held. So by the time they get to Santiago or to Kathmandu, they have a lot of knowledge and experience to then work together in the room to develop their own advocacy strategies. So if this works, I would expect this to be a regular part of what we do, and then we'll look at the scaling opportunities from it.
Any other comments on this report? Just a quick question. Obviously connected to your report was the accessibility report. Do you want to talk to that or just take questions?
I'm happy to take any questions. We are making good progress as promised. I think the one thing that and Dan York is on the call if you have specific questions. We've been doing the testing of our sites, both the Internet Society and Foundation sites. They're coming up with really strong results, which means that the works that the team had been doing over the last several years to make our sites more accessible is starting to pay off, and we're seeing that in the data. So really, really proud of the staff that have been working on that. We are working on the courses to build more awareness for staff about how to incorporate accessibility into their own work and those considerations. And also, I think a fun little fact, we met with Mohammed, which some of you will remember very well, and Judith at the IGF in Riyadh, and they are part of the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility within the IGF. And Sarah was there in that meeting, and they have developed a set of recommendations for the global IGF and the national and regional IGFs for how to make those events more accessible. They pointed out that a number of the accessibility sites sessions themselves are not offered translation services. They are put in facilities that are not physically accessible to individuals. There's a lot of barriers, physical barriers to participating in IGFs themselves. They've created a set of guidelines. They're really well done. And Sarah and her team have now made those available to the national and regional IGFs that we fund so that those get incorporated into those NRIs. So I thought that was a really nice connection to make. And of course, Mohammed and Judith are doing great work there.
Thank you for sharing. Any questions about the accessibility report?
So two quick questions, Sally. Your summary said that the website scored really well on the desktop view. I didn't see anything in there for mobile views. I could have missed it, but do you know how well that we're doing on the mobile devices?
I'm going to ask Dan, who is on the screen at a very early hour.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. Yeah, Brian, it was great. When at the time that we did that report, we didn't yet have the mobile view in. We've now received that. It's not the 99 we got for the desktop view. It's about 82 for the main site that was there. So, we've identified a number of different pieces of work that needs to be done there, and then these are automated tests, so they're great. They give you a nice score. They give you a good sense of that and a good piece of that. We're also going to be looking to take that further. The vendor that we use has some testing programs where they use people who actually have disabilities and use assistive technology to go and push at the site a bit more to see how does it really work in a actual use case. So stay tuned. The next time we give this report, we'll have a lot more to tell you and a lot more numbers and things.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. And the second question, and maybe it goes to Dan as well. When we first brought up the accessibility when Mohammed was still on the board, there was a lot of concern about some of the legacy content. And I vaguely remember somebody saying hundreds, if not thousands of pages that we have no idea. When I look at the report, there was like half a dozen domains listed as legacy. Do we have a better grasp on what you're going to consider legacy and what isn't?
Yeah, in the November 2024 board meeting, we had put the website accessibility plan that was there, and we outlined in it what were the primary sites that were under our control, which are I think eight to 10 sites that are there. And then there are the ones that are run by other vendors that we can't do a whole lot to address. And then there are a number of legacy sites that we just we aren't using or are sunsetting or pieces like that that we've just put out of scope at the current time.
Okay. Or do you have any plans to like mark those as legacy in a way that might make sense? Or
well, the reality is most of those particular sites are not getting a lot of traffic or not getting a lot of usage anyway. So it's not that people aren't. It's just they're less of a concern.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep. Glad to answer any questions anytime people have them.
Thanks very much. And just a note, if you're ready for people not to use them, you can always set them to be not searched by the various crawlers, and that will help drive the numbers down even further. But any other? Oh, thank you, Secretary.
Thanks, Sally and Dan, for your good work. I got the opportunity to work with the Sri Lankan government. They are recently going to pass the bill on accessibility. So at that meeting, they were asking for the opportunities where we can collaborate with the international experts to get the standards, the right practices, and so on. So they were looking for the opportunity to get involved with our team, ISOC team, to improve the accessibility bill, which is supposed to pass on Sri Lankan Parliament maybe next month. So I just wanted to officially write to you as one member of this group, policy group, and to connected with the Sri Lankan parliamentarians and our group to improve the accessibility bill, which is going to pass on Sri Lanka.
We'd be happy to talk to you about that. And I would also say that the standing group on accessibility is excellent. They have really good resources that we can draw on together. So let's do that.
Okay, seeing no other comments on those reports, thank you very much, Sally. And now we're going to Yogesh for an update on the ISOC activities.
Hey, let's try that. Is it open? All right. I'm delighted to be here, first of all. This is 2 months in, and we are going to tag team here. Katie's going to actually give you the details of how we've performed in the first quarter and parts of the second quarter. But I would be remiss if I didn't give you some observations in the first 2 months that I've been here. So I have literally one slide and a set of bullets, and let me just kind of expand on that and share with you some of what I've observed in the last 9 weeks or so. The first one I want to talk about is our global workforce. I've spent better part of my 9 weeks meeting a lot of people, both on the ISOC side as well as the foundation side. I had a lot of one-on-ones, have met a lot of folks in group sessions, a lot of retreats that I've dialed into, et cetera. And the commitment to an open, globally connected and secure, trustworthy internet across the board, as I talk to people, is not just a tagline. It's really a lived principle. Everybody kind of walks and talks that line, which is just amazing. I call that the unity of purpose. And I can't tell you all the efforts that I've spent in my past career where you spend so much time trying to build that unity of purpose. It is so apparent that that's something that we don't have to worry about. It's just fantastic. We do have a global footprint. We deal with a lot of complex cultural and time zone and languages and political landscape type issues. But our team really has been able to work through all those things in a very collaborative manner and a very professional manner, which just impresses the heck out of me. We have a truly passionate and highly qualified workforce. I mean, the spectrum of what we do is just so wide. And as I talk to individuals who are policy experts, who are trainers in the technical details, who know how to deploy IXPs, how to write grants and all that, it's truly impressive. I'm just blown away. And the altruistic sort of mindset that everybody has to not just do the right things, but do the right things the right way, that to me is very inspiring and contagious. So I am just honored to be part of this wonderful team, all right? Scope of work, let's talk about that. Next bullet, yeah. So, as I said, the spectrum of what we do as an organization is truly wide and deep. And as I look at the website and as I onboarded and I came on into the ISOC family, the mission was the easiest part to understand. Right? What we do as a broad mission is very simple. You lift the hood, and like I said, the types of things we do, it is fairly complex. And that was not lost on me. And my immediate sort of thing was, well, I'm coming in, and I think there's a little bit of an expectation. You alluded to that, Sally. We have to simplify, and we will. We will simplify a bunch of things. But let me give you a couple of sort of anecdotes in the last 8 weeks. Our work fundamentally begins with selling the impact. I mean, I love this. I don't know if you've seen this chart on the foundation website, which I'm a huge visual person, and anchor graphics are a big deal to me. There's a fantastic anchor graphic on the foundation site that talks about, we first sell the impact, then we create the impact, then we communicate the impact, and then we empower with impact. That kind of sums up just about everything ISOC does, not just ISOC, but ISOC Foundation. That is the holistic view that I kind of resonated with right off the bat. We do operate across many of these regions, from grassroots projects to international policy to connecting the unconnected, training. Like I said, I just learned we have about, I think, 8,000 students that we train every year. That's like a mini university that we're running, which is just incredible. And certainly the security aspects of it, making it trustworthy and secure is a big part of it. And we do all this with roughly 160-ish employees. But we can't do that with just that many people. We do it with a vast network of volunteers that come in through the chapters and all that. So mobilizing that entire group who have day jobs and they work with us as a team is just incredible. So like I said, the goal is to simplify. But what I had a bit of an aha moment about 4 weeks ago when we were in Paris. We met as a team, and I was very much still, and I still am learning a lot of what we do. And, while my mindset is to simplify everything, it dawned on me that the complexity that is under the hood is really not a liability for us. I think it's a differentiator. And let me explain. If you look at all the various co-funds that we're striving for, and let's just call that entire entity a set of donors. Our donors have choice. They have a choice to actually give money away, right? A lot of these folks are very well aligned with our mission, but many of our donors have a choice to just give to other good causes, healthcare, right? Or, eradicating polio or malaria and things like that. So they're just looking for good causes. To have a global impact like what ISOC does, it takes, as they say in the US, it takes a village to do this. And there's a complex machinery that is all interrelated. It's a systems problem, right? It's not just training people or it's just not doing policy. Everything has to come together. And that is the complex world that we as ISOC have figured out how to make work, right? So rather than saying, well, it's too complex and we got to simplify, I think we embrace that as a differentiator, but find a simple way, find a simple narrative to explain what we do and how we do it and how we do it effectively. I think that goes a long way to our donors to say, I need to deploy my funds. I'm going to go with an entity that has figured out this complexity, right? So I think we wear that. I would like to. I'm the new guy, so I'm not saying this is our strategy going forward, but I would like to wear that as a badge of honor, that we figured out the complexity, but find ways through our communications leads and experts, a simple way to explain what we do, all right? Next bullet. Now, having said that complexity is okay, there are clearly things that we have to simplify. So there are some organizational efficiencies, Sally alluded to those, that we are absolutely going to realize in the immediate future, right? One of the things that I've noticed, and this is maybe I'm sort of getting away from the governance and going into the management, but I think in the spirit of transparency, it's important for you to know some of the areas that I'm focused on in the near term. What I'm discovering is that we have lots of projects and project leaders and subject matter experts that are out in the trenches. And as much as importance of management is not lost on me, the real value that we create is by way of those experts who are in the front lines executing. And what I've observed is that maybe we are putting a little bit too much burden on them with respect to some of the administrative responsibilities that they have. So I am looking very carefully and going through a fine comb, as they say, looking at the functions that they have that are administrative in nature and seeing how can I offload those from those folks so they can truly focus on their expertise in delivering the impact that they have the ability to do. So that's number one. Some of the internal organizational structures and the processes are there for very good reasons. If I come in as an outsider and I look at those, I say, well, I think we can change that up and simplify. But as I mentioned that to Sally and Chris, you know, I think it's sometimes disruptive to say, well, that can be different and better. You have to sort of understand why we got to that point in the first place, right? We're all pretty smart people, and through evolution, there's always a reason why that complexity exists. So I'm constantly trying to poke into that before I say, well, let's change that. I don't want to change for the sake of changing. I want to change it with purpose. So having said that, I think there are some organizational seams that we have to work across for good reason that sometimes get in the way. And we're trying to figure out how to actually clean that up a little bit and make our process a little bit more streamlined. And that's very much work in progress. The third thing I want to highlight in terms of efficiencies is we have, again, evolved over the last probably 5 to maybe 10 years with lots of tools and technologies in our environment, right? For a size of our organization, I think we fundamentally, I think, humbly, I think we have too many tools. We have too much technology at our disposal. And a big effort that's underway right now is through our technology shop, a tools rationalization effort. Basically inventory all the tools, make sure that we understand the functionality that each tool provides, see where the overlaps are, make sure that we're not overpaying for things. Right? There's no reason to have 3 tools that have very similar functionality, but we're using all 3 of them in different parts of the regions. Just added cost, but more importantly, added complexity. Every time you put another tool in, there's another interface you have to worry about. Another interface means security vulnerabilities. Trainability becomes an issue. And you know, when you think about all of us have radars on our screen, where am I getting the information from within the enterprise? Suddenly I have to deal with 3 or 4 radars as opposed to 1 radar. That's hard, right? So we're focusing maniacally on the technical side internally to see how we actually do things better, more efficiently. So that's on the horizon. And then we recently sort of changed the IT shop, if I could call it that. It was kind of a subservient role. Something breaks, you call these guys and they come fix it. Taking a different approach. It's more of a business partner approach. The IT shop has been rechartered to be a technology solutions and services team. I talked a little bit about the inventory. Each system that we have that we rely on will have a business owner and there'll be a technical owner. And there'll be ways for that business owner to drive the requirements and changes that are needed now and in the near term. And the technical owners will make sure that we enable that, right? It's a very simple concept, but it's going to work, right? All right, let me speed this up a little bit. So those are some of the efficiencies. Let's go to the next one, alignment. I think this has been talked already extensively, aligning ISOC and foundation, speaking the same language, same vocabulary, making sure that there's a clear line of sight from the moment that we get the grant all the way to all the projects and the granting out that occurs is just going to make us that much better. And that quad chart that I talk about, selling the impact and all that, going across, just makes it flow much easier. So we'll work on that effectively. And I think there's a lot of progress that we've already made in our teams. So let me just quickly summarize, next bullet. Kind of looking ahead, a handful of key attributes that I'm looking at for my vision for ISOC's future. I think, when you think about strategy is a lot about what we're going to do, but it's also what we're not going to do. So our focus is going to be on the core areas of connectivity, trust, resilience. We're going to do a bunch of other things, but when things are not very clearly in those swim lanes, we have to have the courage to say that doesn't quite fit. We're not going to do those. So maniacally focus on our strategic areas. Deeper alignment with the ISOC Foundation. I already touched on that. Elevated global influence. We have a lot of good thought leaders. We need to figure out how we actually clone some of these folks. We have a handful of experts, you've dealt with Olaf and Christine and others. To have greater impact, to have thought leaders out there, we have to be out there. So we're going to be leaning forward with some of these things and driving, whether it's positions on certain issues or advocating for them. I want us to lean forward with that, and that with the co-funds that you've got, with the additional funds, hopefully we'll be able to hire a couple more folks in the near term. We're going to be empowered by local capacity and voices. Chapters are huge for us. We can't do it without those force multipliers. So we're going to go deep with those guys and in the spirit of partnership, leverage them even more. Data-driven approach is going to be key. We are in the first year of our 5-year plan. We're collecting a lot of battle scars and data. So we're going to be leveraging that, learning from it, and driving our future decisions based on that. Operational excellence and financial resilience is going to be at the core part of the DNA as we move forward. And as I've said, the mission is very pure, very easy to understand. Everything we do has to be mission-led, right? If it doesn't fit in the mission, it's going to fall outside, right? So that's the approach we're taking. Those are some of my initial observations and look ahead, but I'd be happy to take some questions before we turn it over to Katie.
Actually, I'm going to ask that we go straight to Katie, and that if folks have questions for you, that they meet with you at lunch or things, but given we're running a little bit behind time. Thank you.
All right, thank you for this opportunity to share Q1 progress with you. Let's look under this hood together and see what's happened so far this year. Again, the purpose of this presentation is to share the Internet Society highlights from Q1 2025. This is a summary of the data you would have seen in your read-ahead materials. And you'll see, as Yogesh noted, the structure of this presentation mirrors our 2025 action plan in alignment with our 2030 strategy. And so you'll see the various programs and transformations broken out. I'll also call out stories where we've got really incredible impact happening. And it's happening in that all of ISOC approach that Sally talked about earlier. And so they're really impressive case studies of how when people come together, amazing things happen and lasting impact happens. So next slide. Next slide. Oh, did you want to? Yeah. Community-centered connectivity is our first of 6 programs. Remember that when it comes to what we are trying to solve here, over 2 billion people have zero or insufficient internet connectivity, making them the hardest and most expensive to reach. This program addresses that challenge by providing easy and sustainable solutions and advocating for policies that support community-centered connectivity. Next slide. In Q1, really the headline for all of these slides is to consider that this again is data through Q1. We've got a lot of work still ahead of us for the rest of the year. Things are on track. Despite this view might look like it's not, things are overall. This is just the picture of Q1. I'll quickly move through this slide and talk about that in Q1, this program team really focused on broadening our model for community-centered connectivity, which has historically has prioritized community networks as our primary solution. So this team did a lot of building the foundation effort in Q1, in addition to an engagement strategy and implementation plan. So they really, although this is work and space we've been very active in for many years, took the time to really assess current state and what adjustments needed to be made. In addition, you can see in the lower right, we had an open window for community network grant applications in Q1. We received 292 applications. And those grants will be, just making a note, awarded later this month in June. One of the things to note, you can see that conversion rate there, right? 292 was our number of applications received, and the number that met the criteria and went forward to review is 20. That's about a 7% conversion rate. Our standard range is between 10 and 30%. And so that was a little bit low for us, and it indicated that we need to take an action to better support our applicants. and make sure that those applications that they submit are strong. We do have available resources available on our website, but to us that signaled we might need to take additional action. The other thing that's worth noting, I think we note this every time we've got the CN grant application window, that we've got a lot of wonderful activity on our website. It's worth noting that in late 2023, we launched a do-it-yourself CN toolkit. This is an evergreen resource that we want to see its usage and adoption. And when we have these open grant windows, we see people downloading the resource and using it. In Q1 alone this year, we had 178 downloads. Last year, collectively, we had a total of 482. If we continue at this pace this year, we're on track to double the amount of downloads that this resource has. So that's wonderful to see that the tools we're building, the things we're investing in, have a really long shelf life, a useful shelf life. The last thing I'll highlight on this slide has to do with an impact story. You can see it's related to Papua New Guinea Community Network. This is work we started back in 2021, I think. We provided training, resource, and capacity building support. And let's take a look at that video. Yeah.
Given the time, I think
Oh.
we should skip. Do you want to do the video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, please play the video. I'll try her.
My village is 63 kilometers southeast of Port Moresby. Welcome to Gaba Gaba village. I became paraplegic in 2010 and therefore now bedridden, as you can see me. I'm an IT guru in major and computer networks, both wired and wireless. I realize that everybody is using mobile phones and things like that, and they're communicating. And I better start using my IT skills, to do something about my intranet.
What I can say is that now a lot of the policies are aimed at connecting Papua New Guinea not only via roads but also via internet. Flag to the industry the amount we need to collect to fund those projects. It's basically funded by the ICT operators in the country.
It has impacted the lives of most of our young people in the village.
I am Ken. I have a chicken farm, little chicken farm. I Google about how to do farming, how to look after chickens, grow bananas and all that stuff.
With the internet, you can easily apply for jobs that also don't require you to be physically present within the province. It's not a want anymore, it's a need.
I usually come here to do part-time jobs like writing my CV, updating and sending them out.
My vision is to transform the rural communities, so that everybody is digitally literate.
Great, thank you. We can proceed to the next slide. That was a great example, again, of this all of ISOC approach. We have, and the fact that, look, impact takes years and years. That was years of relationship building. We have local partners, our local chapter staff coming together for lasting impact. Next is affordable and reliable access. So the problem that we're addressing here is that we know internet access is more expensive and unreliable where interconnection infrastructure is weak or lacking. This program seeks to make access more affordable and resilient, again, for populations specifically in least developed countries and small island developing states. Next slide. Just a couple things to highlight. You'll see some data at the top. Q1 is a lot of prep work, thinking about what's coming for the rest of the year. We'll see that ASN reps jump with our major events, including AFPIF in August. So we'll see a lot of good results related to those metrics. We did have a grant application open window, and again, those will be awarded in June. We also, this is the year where we've officially transitioned the African Peering and Interconnection, our role as organizer of the annual African Peering and Interconnection Forum. And again, that is scheduled for later in August, so that's on track. We also had in Q1, this program handed over the in-person training to the foundation and the training and e-learning team. And they did a great job with peering roadshows. In Q1, there were 4 roadshows that were produced in a more efficient and scalable way. So that's great to see. Next slide. Online trust and safety. Again, this program is related to the challenge that without access to knowledge and resources, newly connected people, especially marginalized and underserved populations, face a higher risk of security and threats during their online experiences. This program seeks to equip recently connected people with knowledge and skills so that they can protect themselves online and advocate for choices made by commercial and government decision makers that prioritize safety, security, and privacy. Next slide. A special feature of this work is that it is, it's all about co-creation with our community. So Q1 was really about standing up this program. It's a new space for us. There was a lot of, I would say, listening, learning, consultation, and discovery in collaboration with our community. In Q2, we expanded that and are talking more with partners and broadening our reach with who we're talking to. The end game here is at the end of the year, we will have developed a pilot training product to test and really ensure that we're offering something that is useful, addresses the needs of these specific audiences, and also addresses any gaps that they might be experiencing.
Just a quick comment on this, that this might be something to connect to the accessibility work relatively early, because that's a community that's especially vulnerable when they come online, because many of the signals that we use to determine trustworthy versus non-trustworthy content are different when you don't have access to the full visual field.
I can just say, yeah.
One other area of interest for us is that PIR is doing a tremendous amount of work in terms of their fight against DNS abuse, and particularly about child exploitation online. And so they're in conversations with John and Brian and the team this week, there's a lot of alignment between what PIR is doing with their community and what we're trying to do. And so one of the things that we're committed to doing is finding more ways to operationalize the relationship and leverage the expertise in both areas. So that will come into the online trust and safety program later this year.
Next slide, please. Program 4, Open and Trustworthy Internet. Again, this program seeks to empower policymakers, courts, decision makers, and commercial entities with the knowledge and awareness to facilitate change. Next slide. In Q1, the focus here was really developing, we've talked about the community workshops already today. The purpose of those workshops are to strengthen community members' knowledge and skills to implement relevant local advocacy projects and strengthen cross-regional collaboration. So we're really excited to see how those workshops go. The first one is in LAC in Chile in August, and then followed by Nepal in October in APAC. So we're really looking forward to those. So Q1 was a lot of heavy lift to get those designed and off the ground. Also, that project created a fellowship in Q1 as well. They opened a round of applications, received approximately 700 applications, and selected a diverse and representative cohort of 56 fellows for the 2 workshops, so 26 fellows each. IETF, yep, sorry.
Just a follow-up question. I know that Sarah is a big advocate of making these cohorts sort of semi-permanent sets of support infrastructure. Were you able to do that for these workshop groups as well, by kind of creating long-standing mailing lists or other group interactions for them?
I believe so. Do you have more context about that?
Yeah, one thing that Joyce and her team have been building out is our alumni function. So part of this is about the future internet champions. So all of these members of these workshops will be folded into the alumni
to ensure that they stay engaged, to create the cohort kind of environment that they can compare notes and learn from each other and keep being part of the Internet Society. So yeah.
That's really great to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
IETF Policymaker Program, we had our first of 3 sessions delivered in March in Bangkok. This program is well regarded. We continue to ensure this remains a consistent and quality program. We're also putting the final touches. I think this is something we talked about in March. Plans to deliver a standalone ad hoc program for the Australian government. And so that pilot is strategically important as IETF locations in 2026 will prevent the standard co-located program structure that we're accustomed to. Oh, yeah.
So I was wondering the specific criteria that you use to say that the policy maker program is a success outside maybe the policymakers attending and we got them into the room, how we use the fact that we have that network or the connections with them to influence certain policy changes that we want as Internet Society. So I'm just trying to understand how you were able to measure that success.
Would you like me to? Or you wanna-
Actually, I think this was part of what Sally was saying earlier. As you remember, we're transitioning from outputs to impact. This is a measure of the outputs because we set the success measure in the action plan for holding 3 of them, 1 at each IETF. So this is the measure of that. And I think the ongoing discussion is how then do you transition from that to the point you're raising of the impact? You know, do they become long-standing contacts for ISOC in policy matters, et cetera. But this in particular is because the action plan was measuring holding the policymaker sessions itself.
Thank you. UN advocacy, we've talked about this already today. We've got IGF in Norway coming up very shortly, as well as WSIS Plus 20 high-level event in July. We've also spoken, as Flavio mentioned, about the WSIS Plus 20 community group being just launched. So these conversations are happening, and we are working hard to prepare for these eminent events that are exciting on our calendars. Trainings, we've got some encryption workshop training that actually happened in Q1. This was very targeted for civil society organizations representing vulnerable groups in Europe. So we have folks that like journalists, activists, policy advocates in the room from the social society sector. It was a really interesting workshop. Also policy brief, if you recall, one of our goals was to update those, to improve them so that there's better user experience. Those are in the works and everything's on track related to that. Amicus, we did launch an international monitoring component to that work, which extends our view beyond the US. We're seeing some things emerge, in Q2, but nothing yet to show for the year. We continue to monitor the US and internationally, keep you updated as the year progresses. There's a really cool story related to an encryption threat in Sweden. It's cool because, again, this all of ISOC approach, we've got a lot of stakeholders coming together to draft a joint letter that was signed by 237 civil society organizations, companies, and security experts. This involved the Internet Society Sweden chapter and their response to Sweden's proposed data storage and access to electronic information legislation. It's also worth highlighting the GEC, the Global Encryption Coalition, played a large role in that. And in fact, they just turned 5 in May. So we now have 466 members in 108 countries for the GEC. That's really exciting to see. Next slide. Internet Insights and Innovations. This is the Internet's a thriving internet ecosystem requiring reliable data and clear standards to understand the forces shaping it. So next slide. A big part of this program includes NDSS. I think we spoke about this a little in March, that was quite, we broke a lot of records for that event. And Ultimately, the numbers, the final numbers were 1,372 paper submissions. 211 papers were presented live. So we're seeing a lot of engagement. We've got fellows on the ground. We've got our chapters there. And it's just a lot of collaboration and energy around that event. Pulse, again, that's that resource for established, trusted source of data-driven insight into the internet's availability, evolution, and resilience. In Q1, the team made improvements in terms of user experience, layout, and design, especially for mobile. And we also hosted the first Pulse Internet Measurement Forum at Apricot in February. So over the course of the day, about 90 people heard from 11 presenters. I think Steve Song was there, who shared their internet resilience research and experience. We also had a Pulse Fellowship launch. And to scale the work, we're pairing these fellows with mentors. We also presented Pulse to the alumni community, and they were highly excited and really were thrilled to see the data and the role of this tool. I'm going to go to next slide, please. Community partner and mobilization. This program is dedicated to empowering and uniting our global community and partners to amplify the collective impact of the Internet Society. Some things to note have to do with community events. We've got a lot coming up later in this year. So next slide. Q1 was all about preparing for those. We've got all member regional calls, community days, award ceremonies coming up. So there's going to be a lot of activity related to this. It's also worth noting, we're getting really good at ensuring that community and partner mobilization is embedded throughout all of our program areas. And so while this is a dedicated program itself, it is also woven throughout each project and program that we do. And so we're also getting a lot better at capturing data related to what are those activities and where are we seeing interest from the community. So it's really exciting. The data side of it's really exciting. And this is a space where we're getting more formal about and defined about what we measure. Next slide. Transformations, next slide, we outlined, I think 4 in the action plan for 2025. I'll share a quick update about those 4. First, fostering governance and ethical best practice. We are on pace to meet the initiative's 2025 goal to evaluate and improve our procurement and vendor management processes. In Q1, we established a vendor management oversight program and began assessing our current procurement-related processes to identify gaps and issues. The next one related to empowering a talented workforce. The update here is we decided to shift the HR information system implementation back a little bit. This gave Yogesh some time to get his technology solution and services team in place so that we as an organization were in a position to properly implement that. Connecting an inspired community. It's exciting to see the audit that's coming out of the foundation regarding community communication. So we're excited to apply those learnings and improve. And the second aspect, my team did a ton of effort related to centralizing and standardizing community reporting, like I just alluded to. This has been years in the making, and it's a really exciting moment that we're able to have structured, centralized, consistent data. Last is related to embracing data-driven decision-making. Again, my team led an effort related to a data governance assessment, and that was delivered in Q1. We took that assessment and then applied initial steps and a way to stand up a data governance program. We established a data governance committee. We've got data champions. We've identified priority policies, and we're implementing them over the next several months. Scroll. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your time and attention. Questions or comments?
Thank you very much for the report and for the read-ahead report that you provided as well, the extra detail, and that was very welcome. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, we are running a little bit behind. We were able to confirm with Teresa that she would be able to join us a little bit later. So we're going to take a break for lunch now. Please come back here by 1:20. Okay. We are closing the open to observers session. Welcome back, everyone, from our executive session. The next item on the agenda is the OMAC Chair Report, and to give that here is David Belson. David.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is my first time joining the board meeting to give the OMAC report. So I guess I just read through what's there. That generally what's the way it's done.
Yes. Just go through the report and then take any questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right. So following the board's request, the Organizational Member Advisory Council supported the 2025 Board of Trustees elections by encouraging org members to participate. The members were reminded that voting is a key benefit of membership, which gives them a direct role in shaping the directions and the priorities of the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation. This year, 47 organization members voted, and that was a 60% participation rate. And on behalf of the OMAC co-chairs, myself and Harold Suma, congratulations to Barry Liba and Sagarika Wikra Masakara for their re-election to the board for 3-year terms. We've also delivered 3 OMAC roundtables. Roundtable number 25 was an Internet Governance Forum continuation conversation. As the Internet Society advances its UN and advocacy in 2025, particularly related to the WSIS Plus 20 review and the WTDC 25, interest from organization members to learn more and collaborate has continued to grow. Building on discussions that occurred at the IGF in Riyadh, the 25th OMAC Roundtable gathered organization members to explore how the Internet Society can strengthen collaboration community to develop and promote shared positions on these key processes. 9 Organization Member Advisory Council members attended, which included 1 board member, along with 3 additional board members. And the meeting was rated excellent or very good by 90% of the 7 OMAC and board members who provided feedback at the survey at the close of the meeting. OMAC Roundtable number 26 was titled Creating Affordable and Reliable Access, Impact Reporting Using Data. And this 26th roundtable focused on how data can highlight progress in expanding affordable, reliable internet access. And a case study was given about the Democratic Republic of Congo, which sustained efforts over the past decade that have led to significant improvements in connectivity, as recent data reflects. The session also previewed the Internet Society's work to promote the Open Fiber Data Standard, also known as OFDS, and shared initial findings from a new study on Kazakhstan's internet landscape. These initiatives that were discussed underscore the role of data in driving informed action and supporting a thriving digital ecosystem. 7 OMAC members attended, along with 1 board member, and the meeting was rated excellent or very good by 100% of the 5 OMAC and board members who provided feedback to the survey. And the 27th roundtable was aligning priorities for IGF. And this particular roundtable focused on the upcoming IGF 2025, which will be the final forum under the current IGF mandate. And it presents a pivotal opportunity to assess the IGF's role within the WSIS framework and to highlight the value of inclusive multi-stakeholder dialogue ahead of the WSIS Plus 20 review's conclusion. This roundtable aligned Internet Society and org member priorities for IGF 25. It explored the WSIS Plus 20 timeline, and it initiated discussions on setting a common position and defining the IGF's role in a post-WSIS Plus 20 landscape. 7 OMAC members attended this roundtable, along with 3 board members, and the meeting was rated excellent or very good by 83% of the 6 OMAC and board members who provided feedback. And over the last several months, one of the key learnings we've come to is that there's definitely room for improvement with respect to driving higher roundtable attendance from OMAC members. And that includes both the OMAC representatives as well as other interested parties and colleagues within the OMAC organizations.
Thank you very much, David. Currently, are the invitations for the roundtables something that OMAC members are allowed to distribute within their organizations, or is that something you will be considering for the increasing of the attendance in the future?
So I think we don't explicitly state that they can be distributed when we send out the invitations. So it's not an intentional omission, not an intentional omission, but it's something I think we can do a much better job of stating within those emails. Hey, here's this event going on. You obviously, as an org member, advisory council member, are welcome to attend, but please share more widely.
So I've enjoyed the ones of the roundtables I've been able to get to, and thinking back to my time as an organizational member, I definitely know that there were cases where some specific roundtables might have been of interest to other parts of the company I represented, Google
Right.
or Cisco. For the IGF, for example, I believe the current organizational members would probably have passed this to somebody else at Cisco rather than have attended himself, because it's not really his area of expertise. So I think maybe that's one option going forward.
Yes.
To help increase the attendance and possibly over time to help kind of raise the profile of OMAC within some of these organizations.
Yep, absolutely. And like the example you just gave, I do the same thing, especially around the IGF roundtables, where I definitely make sure that our policy team is aware of those events.
Barry?
Hi, this is Barry Leba. Also the representative, the OMAC representative from my company, and I've always treated all of this as something that I am responsible for distributing throughout the company. The only thing I'm aware of that only I can do is vote, and everything else is I'm just the funnel into the company. But what I really raised my tent to say is thanks for the congratulations, and thank you, David, for taking on the co-chairing job when others had to step back, and I appreciate that. I really think the roundtables are fabulous, and I've attended them from the beginning of them. I believe Harold was responsible for getting that started, and it's really been good to have them. Do you have any comments from the people who didn't say that they thought they were good in the surveys? So to get some idea of why they didn't say that.
I don't. I don't know if Lauren, if you're there, when the surveys are completed, is there any additional commentary that's to be shared along with them? Or I guess maybe actually probably be a better question for Batel or for Kara.
Yeah. So we'll get that data, Barry, but we would certainly look into that, because that's the point of the survey, is to understand.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people just tick the box and don't put a comment, but in case they did. So.
Yep. I'm going to make a note of that as well.
Any other comments on the report? Thank you very much. I did want to kind of bring back to OMAC, though, something that's been under discussion by the board today, and that's a kind of a new effort within the senior staff to focus on a theme that we call all of ISOC, and so Sally will talk to that for just a moment.
Thanks, Ted. As I mentioned to the board earlier, and David, it's useful for, I think, you and the org member community to hear this as well.
The Internet Society and the Internet Society have one strategy. That was the strategy that was adopted by the board with, the two strategic goals that we've been speaking about. Within the senior leadership, one of the things that we are focused on is aligning the activities of the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation towards those strategic goals. The idea is that, these are ambitious goals. The board goals say, people everywhere will. If we want to achieve that at that level of scale, we need to bring all of our assets to bear on these challenges. So we showed a video earlier from Bolivia about an initial training that began with a small number of trainees that grew into a community network that linked up with the chapter, that then received grant funding, that then has worked with the regulator to create a policy environment for that infrastructure, and is now looking to scale beyond that initial community, and most importantly, has brought down costs of internet access in that community and made the internet more accessible for people there. And we think that that's a reflection of how both organizations can come together to achieve impact. So what you should see from us going forward is a very strong and cohesive messaging from the Internet Society and Foundation aligned with those strategic goals, and much hopefully easier for our members to follow what's going on, what we're trying to achieve, where we're trying to have impact in the world.
Thank you. And I think if we have not recently shared either the Bolivia or the New Guinea videos with the OMAC community, it might be a great idea. Although the particular parts of ISOC that came together on that were largely, as you said, chapters and the training and then the grantee aspect of it. There's certainly opportunities in that for organizational members to become involved. For example, that particular one in Bolivia involved setting up a rural network, and I know that there are a number of different networking companies that are part of OMAC that might have participated or might have donated gear to support it had they been involved. So I think we sort of have a little bit of information that maybe isn't flowing all the way to OMAC here. And one of the things we'd like to do is to make sure that this approach and that information also reaches the organizational members either directly or through OMAC. Any other comments to Dave or questions to the Organizational Advisory Council? Okay. Thank you very much again for presenting the report.
Thank you.
And thank you again for all of the wonderful roundtables. It's been great, and I look forward to seeing more of them.
Thanks.
The next item of business is the incredibly exciting approval of our change of principal address. As some members of the board may understand, because we have dropped our physical office location in Reston, we need to have a new permanent address that we can communicate to the various bureaucracies which are interested in our permanent address. And that's what this resolution does. Approve the Internet Society change of principal address, whereas the Internet Society has determined it will close its physical office location in Reston, Virginia, and transition to a virtual principal office. And therefore it be it resolved, Internet Society Board of Trustees hereby approves and authorizes the transfer of the principal office of the Internet Society from 11710 Plaza America Drive, number 400, Reston, Virginia, United States of America, to 1551 Emancipation Highway, number 1506, Fredericksburg, Virginia, United States of America. Resolve further that the officers of the company are authorized and directed to take all necessary actions to effectuate this address change, including but not limited to updating records with the Virginia Secretary of State and notifying all relevant parties of the change. Is there discussion of the resolution. Laura,
A very simple question. What's the new address?
it's up there. 15.
No, I mean, but what does it represent? Is it a corporate virtual address provider, or what is it? Is it somebody's house? That's what I'm trying to understand. I was just curious. Yeah.
So we have engaged back office mailing services, and this is the address of that office.
That was my guess, but thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll just say that if there's a better street name than Emancipation Highway, I haven't heard it. Yay.
This was not the resolution I was expecting conversation on, but Russ, over to you.
I'm just curious why we didn't use the PIR address where you already had staff.
Yeah, we explored that option as well, but there were some administrative issues with that, making sure things are not confusing, and yeah, so we've definitely looked into that option before we ended up with this one. Yes.
Any other comments or questions on the resolution? May I ask somebody to move the motion, please? Oh, I saw Caleb and Victor. I propose that we approve this resolution by acclamation. That being done, the resolution is approved.
Kat, I had a statement for you that thank you. I didn't see your eyes blinking all the time because I don't know what you did. I don't know the amount of coffee you've taken, but after this, please go take a very good sleep because I know what it means on a different time zone. But thank you for staying awake all throughout the night and keeping the video on. It shows that you are accountable to us.
Oh, I'm completely fine. I am only up 2 hours earlier than normal. But thank you.
Thank you very much for attending today remotely, and appreciate everybody for the meeting. We have a couple of AOB items which have come up, which will occur tomorrow during the parking lot for reasons of confidentiality. But is there anything else that we need to cover today before we adjourn? Yes. Okay. With that, we are adjourned for the day. Thank you.
Thank you.